Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the podcast here at Victory Outdoors. Today, we are joined by Shane Simpson. Many of you might know Shane from past episodes of Victory Outdoors. Shane and I have done a lot of turkey hunting together over the years. Not really recently, but we definitely, and you might be a fan of his show as well. He's got callingallturkeys.com and you might follow him on social media. He's got a pretty large following there as well. But Shane, over the last 7 years or so, has kind of also gotten into tracking dogs, and specifically his dog Callie has kind of become a star of its own little web series itself. And so, why don't you talk us through about kind of how that came about, and kind of what kind of you drove you to kind of decide to get a bloodhound.
Yeah, Kurt, we need to get out in turkey hunt again. It has been quite a while.
It is.
Yeah, so long story short, I met this TRAKR down in Illinois 8 years ago, I'm guessing, 7 or 8 years ago, right before I got Callie. But he was telling me some stories about tracking. Very interested in it. I mean, they were thrilling stories, and I decided that I wanted a tracking dog, but I didn't make the commitment yet. And then I was hunting with a buddy, and he made a good shot on the deer. It's just he didn't get any penetration, and so we didn't have any blood to go on. Tried to grid search for the deer, couldn't find it. Asked for some people to help us grid search, and had some volunteers, but they didn't show up. And it was at that point I was like, you know what, I'm getting a tracking dog. That way I don't have to rely on people, and a dog will do a much better job than we can when there's no blood.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I got Callie and trained her. And when she was a year old, started tracking with her. So that's she's turning 7. This will be her 7th season of tracking. And had a lot of people requesting videos of the tracks, because when I first started, I would post pictures of the recoveries and a story to go along with it. And some of those stories were pretty cool to tell, and people, and I think, enjoyed them, because I got a lot of requests to start videoing the tracks. And so I've been doing my best over the years to video that and show people with map overlays and 3D renderings from the bow hunt simulator app of where the arrow hit or the bullet hit or whatever we're tracking. And it's been fairly popular on YouTube. The Callie Chronicles is the name of it. But yeah, so here we are, getting ready to go in our 7th season.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I even reached out. I reached out to you last year with my buck kill, because I was unsure. It was a little bit further back, and I was just preparing myself for the worst. I ended up not needing it. We found the deer really pretty easily, but it's one of those things. I was kind of, oh well. I always, Shane's been doing this for a long time. Callie's awesome. Like I see all these, great posts about the recoveries, and I mean, not everything's successful, right? I mean, but you've got a lot of advantages if you have a marginal shot. That, like you said, those dogs are way better at finding blood, tracking it down, and doing what they're trained to do. Way better than even having a whole field full of people out there grid searching. So
Yeah, so with a dog, what I tell people is, if the deer is dead and we don't have any issues with property lines, most of the time, like 90-something% of the time, dog's gonna find it.
Yeah.
And usually within relatively short order. It doesn't take them long. I've gone on tracks where we found the deer in a minute and 30 seconds.
Right.
And it would have taken a hunter tracking it, an hour or two tracking it with the very little visible sign. And so, and as tracking has gained popularity, people are making this, I think, the smart decision. When it's a marginal hit, it's better to be safe than sorry in a lot of cases. Sometimes we go on tracks where they probably could have recovered it themselves, but they wanted to make sure. You don't want to have a marginal shot and say, okay, let me track it myself. And now you've waited 6 hours to give the deer more time to expire. You start tracking, sight tracking, which is kind of slow and tedious sometimes. and now you're having troubles, and now you're trying to find a tracker, and we may not be available at that point. And so now you've already wasted, 6, 8, 10 hours that had you called a tracker right away, we could have been scheduled to be there and come out and found your deer relatively quickly. So, that's kind of the things we run into also.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, kind of making that decision on whether or not, because it's kind of like, think about like those crime shows. My wife's a big fan of watching those crime shows. I think that's just a wife thing, a woman
Yeah,
thing, maybe. I don't know. But she likes what she wanted to, her major in college was to be a criminal justice, be in criminal justice and that kind of stuff. So she kind of likes that stuff. But at any rate, you watch those shows and they talk about contamination of a crime scene and that kind of stuff. And so, but what I was thinking about while you're talking about that, when you're trampling over that blood trail and you're in there doing all kinds of stuff, and especially if you have multiple people, it's not just you. If you brought in people to help and stuff like that, you're making that a lot harder of a job for the dog,
yeah,
for sure. But
yeah. I mean, it's the analogy I give people all the time is, if there's imagine a park with fresh snow on there, and have someone walk across that park or that field, and then bring a stranger in there and say, "Hey, find this person." Well, they just follow the tracks across that field. Now I'll take that person after they walked across it and have a drop off a busload of people and have them play out there and run across the field. Now bring someone in and say, "Hey, follow these tracks through all this other tracks and stay on that one person and find them." It becomes much more difficult, if not impossible. And so, yeah, when you're if you make a marginal hit, or you think you may need a tracking dog, that always comes before grid searching. Grid searching is the last resort. If you can't get a dog, or if the dog comes out there and the dog can't locate your deer and you're still convinced it's dead, then you might want to grid search. But I've had people call me out, um, even when they don't think the deer is mortally wounded. Like they know it's kind of a high hit. It's probably a back whack, what we call a back whack. It's just muscle hit. But they want to do everything possible to rule out the possibility of leaving a wounded deer out there. So they'll have us come out and we'll run the track. And I've learned from just the experience of tracking how to read my dog. And they when they don't detect that odor of a wounded deer anymore that they put off, she'll lose interest in the track. And I can look at the sign, the type of blood, a lot of different things. We don't need to go into all that detail. There's other podcasts for that. But basically, I can tell within a certain amount of time that, yeah, this deer is not mortally wounded, and they're okay with that. They're satisfied they did what they could, and most of them aren't going to go out there and grid search because they're satisfied the dog's already told them, like, yeah, you're not going to recover this deer. And a lot of them, we get back on trail camera later on, survived, or it's shot later in the season by another hunter or by them later in the season.
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. That's those are some good tips and that kind of stuff. So I mean, so let's you know as you kind of grew, you got to know a lot of these trackers. Because I remember when I called you, you were instantly aware of maybe some trackers that were maybe closer to me than you were. Because I don't know, you're probably at least 4 or 5, yeah, 4 or 5 hours,
Yeah.
yeah, north of me, and so which another side note, I guess, another rabbit trail that I thought about while you're talking about that pond and the park with the frozen and the snow and everything. I wonder if you'd make that analogy if you didn't move to Minnesota, but
I make that analogy because someone shared a picture of a park with snow and footprints in it,
yeah,
and then they showed that same park with a pile of tracks in it. So
yeah,
that visual's in my head all the time.
yeah,
Yeah, but
it,
I don't know what I'd make for an analogy otherwise.
yeah,
That's just an easy one to do.
yeah. No, for sure. But at any rate, you guys, kind of like, obviously we know each other through competition turkey calling and that kind of stuff. And that's a tight knit group of people. And then we kind of call each other family, and pretty much we all know each other for the most part to some level. And, I kind of got the feeling that you guys have a pretty good idea about who's around and part of that. So tell me a little bit about maybe like the different organizations that trackers belong to, and give me a little bit of background there on how you guys network and keep track of each other.
Yeah, so there's the national organization, which is the United Blood Trackers. You can go find them at unitedbloodtrackers.org. And that's the organization that has, I guess, is the testing standard. If you want to get your dog tested for trailing wounded deer, and the organization has all types of trackers for bear trackers and elk or whatever you track. But the testing for it is geared towards deer.
Sure.
And so if that's a great place to start if you're wanting to look for a tracker. And then we have individual state groups, and that came about with the advent of social media. We have the Minnesota Tracking Dogs here. South Carolina, they have a blood trailing network down there. And a lot of them in the South are called like Alabama Blood Trailing Network, Georgia Blood Trailing Network. They kind of one started and they all just kind of created their own state network with the same name but different state name. And so they do what a lot of state groups do. We organize training events or testing events from the UBT, have judges come out. We get our trackers, tested and certified. You don't have to be certified to track. Most of it's volunteers. Like we accept tips and whatnot. But in that group, like the Minnesota Tracking Dogs, we have like the admins, and then we bring on other trackers and people that are interested in getting into it. So we'll have them train. We'll have like 2 events this year or tests. I keep saying train, but they'll train and then they'll test when we have a testing event. And then once they get certified, we'll add them to our map. And we try to keep tabs on people, make sure they're good people, people,
Right.
uh, they're not bad apples. We try to keep the bad apples out. We want them having a good relationship with the public and doing their best to recover them. And they can charge fees if they like. And so that's how a lot of the state networks work. And we, a lot of us belong to the United Blood Trackers as members, but as a national organization, it's hard to manage locally
Sure.
what the state organizations can do. And because of a lot of it's because of my, I guess my hierarchy in the Minnesota Tracking Dogs, I'm one of the admins, and we network with other state groups like Iowa, for
Yep.
instance. And then plus with my YouTube channel, people kind of know me a little more than say your average tracker. And so I will communicate with those also. And especially if someone comes out, I'm looking for a tracker. For instance, if you call me and I'm looking for a tracker in Iowa, I'll
Yep.
message the admins for the Iowa group and say, hey, you got anyone in this area? I got a buddy looking for a dog. Um, you know, doesn't matter which state. Most people, I tell them, I will try to find you somebody, but reach out to this group. It's on Facebook. I'll send them a link to the group and let them do some of their own work. But I don't mind reaching out, if I have the free time. But yeah, we all work together.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you know, kind of dovetailing off of that, um, there was a social media post, I think this week, last week, something like that you put up, and you've been working on, part of a group of guys that are working on a tool, I guess is what I'll call it, to help bring together the hunter and the trackers. And so it's a new app that's come out. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of what that looks like, what the vision's going to be, and kind of the direction that we're going, or that you guys are going with that app.
So I'll give you a little precursor first of how this mobile app came to be and
Yeah.
why we're building it. So excuse me. So as tracking season goes along, it's pretty slow early on. But then as we get closer to the rut, and it varies from state to state depending on when your seasons come in. And like in South Carolina, gun season comes in earlier and lasts a lot longer. So you have a more gradual influx of hunters hunting. Whereas like in Minnesota, the gun season's like 2 weeks long. And so every gun hunter hits the woods at the same time. So now you have 300 gun hunters, 300,000 gun hunters hitting the woods at the same time, or 250,000. So, and it's close to the rut. So up here, not only do you have the rut and all the bow hunters, now you have gun season coming in. We are inundated with tracking calls, tracking requests across the state. And when you only have about 40 trackers in the state, there's far more calls than there are trackers. And just trying to manage all that, it's much easier in the early season. But I'll give you kind of a rundown of how things work in our network. Um, well, I won't spend too much time on the past, but I'll tell you what we implemented, because it gets kind of hectic. We implemented a website and a tracking request form for the Minnesota Tracking Dog. If someone called us and we weren't available, we'd send them, give them a link to that form, and they would fill out this form, and it would and hit submit, and it would go out to our network of trackers, and we'd find out who was available. It was a very
Okay.
efficient way to deal with it. Before that, I mean, you get back from tracking back to your vehicle, and you got 50 missed calls, you got 100 text messages, people saying I need a tracking dog. They don't leave a location or a name, it's just a phone number. Obviously, I'm not going to call every single one of them. Some of the times it's them and their buddies texting, calling, so it's the same track but multiple numbers. And so it was just hectic. And that's why we implemented the website and this tracking request form. And the way we handled it was, it would go out to the network of trackers, and as soon as someone posted that, yeah, I'm available, they'd call the hunter, and they report back, yeah, I'm taking this track tonight or whenever, and we'd mark that track as covered, and we had a private group on Facebook where we could manage all that and see how it flowed. That works okay as long as you have people in the background working to make these posts and make sure all these tracks are out or sent out when they submit this form. And so I would do it in my free time. And I spent a lot of time on my phone, just constant notifications. Okay, a new request came in. I create a post in our private group, send it out to the network, comments going back and forth. I'm tagging trackers that are nearby. When I'm hunting or tracking and I'm not available to do it, another admin was doing it. And then when gun season came in and you're getting 50 to 100 requests a day, that just kind of went out the window. Even the tracking request form wasn't very efficient because we just didn't have the manpower. And I'd already decided or been working on the idea of a mobile app that automated everything, but it was just money wise, it was something that was almost impossible for me to do by myself. But we wanted to test the concept, and that's why we created that tracking request form on the website, which was basically the precursor to the app. And it went over really well. The hunters loved it. A lot of great feedback where they didn't have to worry about calling the tracker in the middle of the night or texting them. They sent out one request, and a tracker would contact them. They didn't have to go down a list of trackers and call every single one of them until they found one available. And so at that point, after last year, I said, yes, we're definitely building the app. We already had like some sketches of how we wanted it to work, but we just had to make the commitment to build it. And so we started at the end of last year, started actually working on building the app. And here we are, we're complete with Android, and iOS will be out beginning of September.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got, obviously, I'm one of those iOS users. I got an Apple. I know. I know. It's funny though, because I used to have Androids way back, and then I got an iPhone, and I really never looked back since. So I think probably most people.
I don't know. They're just so frustrating to me. I've used them both,
Yeah.
and it's frustrating because of, number one, the back button is the biggest thing for me. I can't stand not having a back button. I don't know if iOS has ever created a back button, but my daughter has an iPhone, and anytime something would happen to it, I'd have to take her all the way to the Apple store and sit in line, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Everything you can do on an iPhone, you can do on an Android, and you don't have to deal with like their plugs and stuff that are just, you know, just only for iPhones. Now
Right.
they're coming around and getting the USB-C, but we won't go down that iOS Android rabbit hole. I'll tell you why we created Android first, and that was because we did some polls, and it seemed like it was about 50-50, close to 50-50 users of Android and iPhone in the hunting community. And because myself and my three partners, the four of us, three of us had Androids, one had iPhones, so we went with Android. You don't build both platforms at the same time. It's very expensive. You build one, edit it, make changes until you get it right, and then you copy it for the other platforms. So that's what they're doing right now. They're just basically copying the Android version and making it work for iOS. And so that's where we're at.
That's awesome. Yeah, I immediately, as soon as I saw the post, I jumped on the website for the app, and and I saw that it wasn't quite ready yet. But I was like, I'm excited because so let's start digging into the actual app itself and kind of how it works and how it operates, because I saw some really cool features just in the post that you've put up on social media about kind of what it looks like. And I think from a non-tracker's point of view, like we don't understand necessarily as just a hunter necessarily what important data or information is useful to you before you ever even get there to track the dog. So I think that's kind of what, from what I can tell, it kind of is geared towards collecting a little bit of data about the hit, location, all that kind of stuff, so that it gives you at least a little bit of idea of what direction you're going in.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize as best as possible as far as what we're looking for as a tracker. We want to know when the animal was shot, and then we want some information about the shot to determine when's the best time to track, when we think the animal's probably expired. Is it dead now, or is it going to die in 12 hours? And your location and your availability and my availability to track. You may have to work. A lot of us have jobs too, so you got like those four main things is or three, I should say: when the animal's shot, how long before we think we can track, and then the hunter and the trackers, matching up their availability to track. And so with text messaging or calls, we try not to filter, or most of us don't filter. Some trackers filter tracks and try to take the best ones, but if a person calls me and I'm free, I'm gonna take that track. And so I take, basically I'm taking whatever comes my way. You may call me and you have a track and you're 45 minutes to an hour away. A little while later, another one comes in, it's the complete opposite way. And long story short, we're just, okay, I can take yours, I can take yours as they come in, first come, first serve. And what you end up doing is other trackers are getting calls and we're passing each other on the interstate. I'm going down there to track because they called me and he's coming this way to track, and it just makes it, a lot of wasted time. The app is hopefully going to cure a lot of that, where we can look at it and say, there's three tracks available right here in close proximity to each other. I'll go and cover all three of those tracks. We waste so much time driving between tracks that we're not able to take as many tracks in a day as we could if we were more efficient and knew exactly where they're at and things like that. But so the app, what it does, like I said about the tracking request form on the website, when you download the app and create your hunter account, you can just create one basic account and just put your name and contact info, or you can get more detailed. You can add weapons like the weapon you shot it with, a bow or a crossbow or a firearm, and it'll ask you. You can fill out as much as you want about it. Well, you got to, once you create a weapon, you got to fill it all out completely. Like for a bow, the draw weight, the arrow weight, the broadhead type, broadhead weight, all those factors. Now you could skip that and just submit a tracking request and just indicate I shot with a bow. But we want that data. That data is important to us. Um, some of it's important to us as a tracker, but the data is important to our app for other features we're going to add down the road. I won't dwell on that too much right now. But anyway, a hunter submits a tracking request. They're going to be asked some questions like when they shot the animal, what did they shoot, where they were hunting. Um, it's very simple little buttons you click, multiple choices, sliders for yardages, a little pin on Google Maps you drop either where you're hunting or where you want to meet the tracker close by or something, just the general location. And it takes about 90 seconds to fill this questionnaire out, and you hit submit. When you hit submit, a notification goes to all the trackers in that area that are, or I guess, service in that area. And it depends on the settings the tracker has on his side of the app. For the tracker, like I'll set my range around my location, like 70 miles of my location is where I'll track, and I'll select the animals I track. Like I don't do bear, I do deer. So if you sending out a tracking request for a bear, I wouldn't get a notification. But if you send one out for a deer and you're within that 70 miles, I'll get a notification saying, hey, a track's available. So if there's 10 trackers in that bubble of yours and you hit submit, all 10 of them get notifications at the same exact time. I mean, instantly. We get just like a text message. And we can click on it and see all the details of the track. If you included maybe a short segment of video of the shot, if people are videoing their hunts a lot these days.
Yeah.
We'll be able to see that. That's very instrumental. And that portion is uncompressed. It's not like sending a text message with the video. You know how it gets pixelated and blurry.
Right.
Through this tracking request, it comes full resolution, so we get the clearest picture possible.
That's pretty sweet. I did not know that. That is awesome. Because that's one thing that, since we film everything, obviously, we look at if there's any question, and to me, there's always some question unless I watch him fall down.
Yeah.
I've killed a lot of deer and watched them fall within sight, and that's a great feeling. And I've killed plenty of deer where they don't. But some of them you kind of, well, it's a no doubter, it's inevitable. It's a good shot. And then others, it's like, I'm not sure. And so if it's I'm not sure, then I'm going to always go and look at that video. Cause that gives me, real time. It's real hard. It doesn't matter if it's a doe or it's a buck or whatever the case may be. When you're,
what you see in the moment
yeah,
often changes when you review that footage. It's like, oh, I thought it was a little bit closer to the shoulder, but it was actually back about 6 inches.
right.
And that happened with my daughter's hunt last year when she shot that deer. We both thought it was a great shot, and then I reviewed the footage, and I'm like, yeah, that's a little bit back. And she it was a good shot. It killed the deer pretty quickly, but it was a little bit farther back than I initially thought. And had I not had video, we would have continued to think that.
Right. And I mean, there's just more and more people, whether they're doing it like we do it to create, episodes and shows and that kind of stuff, or whether they're just doing it for their own personal use. It's awesome that they can take that availability and just get that to you, to give you guys that opportunity to review that shot as well. Cause I'm pretty sure I sent you, video, of mine last year, just to kind of give you an idea, or maybe just a screenshot of, the wound as the deer was doing a mule kick.
Yeah, that's typically what I have to get from a hunter because they have trouble sending it, or it's too big to send through SMS, and then you have to use Facebook Messenger. Now I got to friend them on Facebook in order to use that. And so then they're like, well, here, I'll just send you a screenshot. Now the screenshot it's dependent on what screenshot, what frame in the video they choose.
Right.
And that really messed me up one time a few years back where they sent me a frame of the video and you can see the dark shadow in the guts area where they said they hit. And this was with a cell phone. It was a father and a son. And went out there and tracked it. And I was like, man, we can't find your deer. I said, I'm not so sure it was gut shot. And so I had them send me the video using a file transfer software program later on. And I reviewed it on my editing program frame by frame. And that was just a shadow. He actually, the son's arrow actually just skimmed the top of the deer's back. And so we're out there tracking a deer that was obviously not dead.
It got a haircut.
But yeah, but I was reliant on which frame he chose. Had I been able to get the actual video, I would have been able to easily tell. I say, yeah, there's no need in us tracking this deer's alive. But yeah, you live and learn. But yeah, that's one of the cool features. The other feature that, part of that I talked about is the notification. The hunters don't have to go down a list and call people over and over. If there's, trackers in your area, it goes out to all of them if they're on the app.
Right.
And we're trying to get as many on as possible. A lot of them are signing up for the Android version. A lot of the iOS people are just impatiently waiting. I get messages all the time like, "Hey, when's that coming out? It'll be out in a couple weeks." And so I know in Minnesota, just about every tracker we have is on the app or planning to sign up. And so you don't have to worry about texting or calling. If you send a tracking request out and no one replies to you, there ain't no trackers available.
Right.
So go ahead and start grid searching most likely, or start calling and see if you can find someone else.
Yeah, I mean that's it's kind of like Uber, I guess. Like you pull it up and or it shows up on their end and they're able to pick up that track. I don't know if
Yeah, so it's on the hunters. Let me clarify
yeah,
that though. On the hunter, they don't get to see the
right.
trackers. They don't see where they're located. We kept that part kind of private, just for the trackers. The trackers see a pin pop up on a map when a tracking request comes. You get a notification. You can click on it and read the details, or you can go to the tracking map and you can see all the pins. If there's 10 tracks available on the map, or 5 of them may be covered currently, and they're going to be green pins. And you may have seen that screenshot I showed you with the map. The red pins are available to track.
Okay.
And so at a quick glance, we can see the number of tracks, the ones that are available, and their proximity to us. And so I can say, okay, these two over here, I should contact both of them and try to get those together. That way it'll make it more efficient than me taking that one and going back opposite direction, take the other. And then we'll still work together. The trackers will say, hey, you want to take that track? It's over that way, and I'll take these two over here, or vice versa. That'll just make us where we're not passing each other on the interstate
Is
anymore.
there and for the trackers, can they communicate through the app with each other?
No, not at the moment. What so when you're building an app, you try to build it as with as little features as
Sure.
possible to where it will function, and then you test its viability in the market. And so we left off a lot of features we wanted. We wanted to be able to communicate tracker to tracker directly in there. We wanted to be able to add the option for a tracker to turn on their visibility so that when they're taking a track on that pin, it shows other trackers which tracker's on it.
Oh, okay.
So I could click on it and say, okay, this track's covered by my buddy David Little. Um, that's a feature we're going to add, as long as the app takes off and does well. And like I said, it'll be the tracker's decision to make that visible. It'll either say covered by another tracker, anonymous, or the tracker can turn it on and say, hey, I want my other fellow trackers to know that I'm on this one. That way, they'll know where I'm at, and say, hey, Shane, they'll contact me and say, hey, Shane, another track's coming in. Guy just called me, or they see it on the map, and I'm tied up tracking, and I haven't seen the notification yet.
Right.
Those sort of things, communication wise. So there'll still be a lot of communication in the network, but the app's going to help streamline a lot of our, especially on those busy times when, I don't want to talk too much longer, but I will say this: when it gets really, really busy, it's like a ghost town in the message boards for the trackers,
Yeah.
because we're all out there tracking, and some of us don't have cell service, and so this app will kind of bridge that void there.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the actual name and maybe the spelling, so that if people have an Android, or when the Apple one is available and they want to download it, what do they actually need to do as far as to get that downloaded on their phone?
All right, my earbud just came out. Sorry. So yeah, Android is available now, and iOS will be available September 8th. The name of the app is TRAKR, TRAKR. And my partner, Greg Goffrey, let me tell you who all the partners are. It's myself, my buddy Ryan Carpenter, who heard me on another podcast years ago, and he was interested in dealing with the tracking data I was collecting. Turns out he just lives down the road a few miles from me, and we became friends and been hunting together, and he dives into all the tracking data, and that's when I publish it. He's the one putting that all together. So it's me and him. Garrett Prawl from DIY Sportsman YouTube channel. A lot of people probably know him. And then Greg Godfrey from Tethered. And he's the one that kind of came up with the name, and that's why it looks like TRAKR. I guess like you see how Tethered spelled. So
Right.
I liked it. The logo looked great, and so we voted to keep that. And anyway, so you can go to gettracker.com and you can read about the app, see more details about it, and there's links to download it from Google Play or the App Store. Now, like I said, the App Store, it's not available on there yet, but there is an option to sign up to be notified when it's available.
Okay.
Basically, like for the Android user, you just click on download like any other app. If you're a hunter, there's going to be a menu there or a selection. You pick whether you're a hunter or you're a tracker. If you're a hunter, you click that, create an account. Like I said earlier, you can create a weapons toolbox. We call it the toolbox, and you can put bows and guns and stuff in there. It'd be nice to go ahead and do that ahead of time, I should say. And then if you're a tracker, you sign up and you hit submit, and then it's going to tell you it's going to be waiting for a review before you can get in. And we'll review it on our end. We're using these state networks that have already vetted all the trackers. If you're one of those guys on their list, you get in right away. If you're not, I'm going to be doing some research on you. I'll probably be calling you or texting you, finding out more about you to make sure you're not a bad apple. We're trying to keep the bad players off the app, the ones that are in it for the wrong reasons, just trying to scam, because there are people out there that are just going to try and scam you for money. Anytime there's money involved. Now, we don't deal with the tracker's money. That's between you and the hunter. We just connect the two of you. And if you're charging a fee, you deal with the hunter paying you, or if you're getting tips. Just want to make that clear. We're not handling any of that money. This is just a way for you to connect each other. And then once you're approved, then you can go in there and you can edit your. You can upload a picture to your profile. You can do all the different things. Plus, you can view the maps and things like that. All the features that it comes with being a tracker on there, you have access to. Now, I don't know if you got another question, but I wanted to touch on one of the features that hunters are going to enjoy later on, and that's the data portion, the analytics page.
Yeah.
That's being built, and that'll be launched later in the season, October, November, maybe. So as these tracks are coming in, that data is being collected. No personal data. Just want to point that out. We're only interested in the animal you shot and the angle, the type of weapon, gun or bow, your projectile, what caliber gun, what type of broadhead, all those things.
Sure.
How far did the deer go? Was it recovered? Where was it hit? All that fine data that's collected with that, it's stored in our databases. And when the analytics page is launched, the hunters and trackers will all be able to go in there, and they'll be able to filter certain things. Like, I want to look at my setup. How many deer were shot in this setup at this particular angle? What was the results? How far did the deer go? You can compare deer shot in September, like show me all the bucks shot in September. What was the average distance they went after they were shot in the double lung versus a deer shot in the rut, a double lung hit deer with the same setup. Or you could change the setup. I mean, the variables are endless. The possibilities of different variables changing that and seeing different results. And so I could see people spending hours on there just trying to pick out things that match what they're looking for.
Right.
Whereas currently when I post data, it's a piece of paper, and people enjoy seeing that. But there's so many questions like, what are the angles of those shots? How many were 30-30s and how many were buckshot? How many were gun? Whatever. With this, you'll be able to make that decision. You'll be able to answer your own questions. And so that's what we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and I'm one of those that every time you post the analytics and that kind of stuff, like, I don't necessarily know a lot about, how you got to it, but I always, I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm kind of a stats junkie, so I like looking at that kind of stuff. I like to see that, come up with maybe some, just, observations as far as not necessarily diving real deep, but that's cool though that
Wouldn't
people.
you wouldn't you like to be able to filter it
Yeah,
though?
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's really nice that, like, if you wanted to just do your own data mining, you can just sit there and data mine and data mine and data mine, and you can come up with all different kinds of scenarios and that kind of stuff. And kind of think it's interesting because I think, whether you're a tracker or whether you're a hunter, that's probably useful data to both groups.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this is going to be the end of YouTube videos where they're doing penetration tests in ballistics gel or foam targets. Once we build enough data points, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, maybe not even that long. I know that we took in like a couple thousand tracking requests in Minnesota alone last year.
Right.
And so if you're thinking this is going nationwide and this is handling every single track, possibly not every single track, but a large portion of them, it wouldn't take long, a couple of years, and you could see, thousands of identical situations with similar setups, and you could see the pass through rate on them and versus non pass through, and you could definitively, I would say, make an assumption that okay, this setup works a lot better than this one because it's getting pass throughs 80% of the time. The other one's getting it 40% of the time. That's pretty
So you're telling me,
solid evidence.
so you're telling me that we're going to solve once and for
Yeah.
all the debate about broadheads. And because, like, literally, I don't know how many groups I'm in, archery based groups, that basically one of the rules when you sign up to come in is that you will not ask what is the best broadhead or what broadhead do you use. Because it just, it's kind of one of those things like, uh, and inevitably the answer is, well, it really doesn't matter as long as you shoot them, in the right spot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think you're ever going to end that argument,
probably not.
but at least this will give someone some a little more backing when they make a claim and say, "Well, you just take a look at the tracker
Yeah.
stats. It's pretty definitive. Whether you believe those or not. They're there. It's like
Yeah, that'd be
with anything. I guess it's great evidence,
right.
but nothing's ever 100% proven.
Right, exactly. And then I think, but you could say, on average, this kind of broadhead or these kind of broadheads, you're not going to have brands in there, right?
Yeah, it's got
Oh, man.
brands and models.
Nice. Wow.
It's,
That's awesome.
yeah, it gets pretty detailed.
Yeah, I mean, then even, beyond that, you'll be able to basically say, that, there's a data set out there that will tell you, versus maybe the field. You could take one particular brand versus the field and probably do some analysis that way. Or you could do, you could keep it as simple as, mechanical versus fixed blade. And,
Well, you could
that's
do fixed blade versus fixed blade. You could do
sure.
a two blade double bevel against a two blade single bevel and see what the results there. Something as simple as that. I don't think I just thought about this. People are going to look at it, and even if the data suggests one is much better than the other. Say there's 10,000 shots that match your criteria, the angle of the deer, where it was, the shot placement, because we're tracking the shot placement and everything. And you show 10,000 deer shot the same exact way with similar setups. The only thing different was the broadhead, and one outperformed the other. You're still going to have people say, well, we don't know how their arrows were flying. They may not tune their bows as well. So you got that variable in there. And so I
Right.
just don't believe these stats.
Right.
You
Well,
would think that you would have the same amount of people shooting this are going to have bad tuned arrows as the other group. It's going to be pretty much even.
exactly. And I mean, brand loyalty is a powerful thing. So people
Mm-hmm.
people like what they like. So, but no, it will be.
I used to be that way. I'm not that way anymore. I just shoot what seems to do well.
I mean, um, obviously, I think, I started out shooting, fixed blades. I probably shot mechanicals probably for the last, I don't know, probably 12 years. I'm going to guess maybe almost 15 years. But I started
Yeah.
out with a fixed blade, or a fixed blade that was a 3 blade. I think it was Muzzy. if I remember right. But
I was going to say everybody starts with a 3-blade Muzzy. It seems
yeah,
like, especially when our age.
yeah, exactly. And so that's what I first started out with, and then mechanicals became more popular, and I've messed around with a whole slew of different brands and that kind of stuff. Currently, we're shooting Severs, but that's just a rear deploying type. Like a lot of them are on the market. But I mean, honestly, if you make a quality shot, I don't know that there's much difference as long as you make a good shot. It's when you make that marginal shot or straight up bad shot that it could make a difference. So,
See, I slightly disagree with you there. I know that we have these discussions on social media a lot, and people say it doesn't matter what you shoot, shot placement is number one. And looking at the tracking stats or the stats we have,
yeah,
I put shot placement below penetration because
sure.
penetration, when we look at recoveries, the deer that were recovered, there's a much higher odds of, when you have a pass through, there's a much higher odds of recovery. It's like 68, 70%. And the guys that don't have a pass through, um, lower odds of recovery. And so what I tell people is like, you can make the perfect shot, right to the heart. But if you only get 3 or 4 inches of penetration and you don't actually make it to the heart, that shot placement means nothing.
Sure.
But you could shoot anywhere in the abdominal or thoracic cavity and get a pass through or a lot of penetration. That's going to kill the deer.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
No, I agree with
And
you on
so,
that. That is absolutely 100% true. I mean, yeah, you don't get the penetration to get to those vital organs. It's not going to do you any good. Yeah.
it doesn't matter how perfect your shot is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, but ideally, we want a combination of both. We want good penetration and we want good shot placement.
Yep.
I don't like seeing these shows they hit like 3/4 of the arrow sticking out. That's never good.
Yeah.
If you can bury it, most of the arrow in there, that's fine. What I see in the tracking data though is you don't want the arrow in the animal at all, because contrary to belief, it doesn't keep cutting up inside the animal.
Yeah.
It may cause a few extra lacerations, but it's not, nothing that's really going to hurt the deer. What it does is it keeps that deer moving. He won't bed down as long as there's an arrow stuck in it. He keeps traveling. Those deer on average travel much farther to recovery. When we find them, they're much farther away than the ones that have a clean pass through. That they bed down sooner and they die, in that first bed.
Yep.
Something to keep in mind, though.
No, for sure. I'm a firm believer in making sure I like FOC. I build my arrows, so I've got a brass insert in them. I'm shooting 125 grain, broadhead. I'm trying to get that. My arrow total weight is probably right at 500, but 500 grain.
That's a good weight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not.
I will say this:
super meat missile. I'm not shooting a super bomber, type of thing. But it's a heavier arrow than some guys would shoot.
I will say this: in my opinion, you're shooting the if you're going to shoot a mechanical, you're shooting the right one. Those seem to be the best performing broadhead out there. The Severs,
yep.
like the 1.5s or whatever.
Yep.
They're built to withstand stuff. And I'm not a big mechanical guy. I've used them in the past. I didn't have great results with them, and that's probably why I still shoot a fixed. But if someone said, Shane, you've got to shoot a mechanical, you have no choice, they forced me to, but gave me the choice which one, I'm picking the Sever. And I think my buddy Garrett Prawl, I think that's what he's shooting now. And the ones I've tracked that were hit with a Sever, basically the reason they needed me to come track in the first place was because they were hunting from the ground and they didn't have much of a blood trail.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it didn't do the job. I mean, they're getting pass-throughs and they're doing a lot of damage.
Yeah. I've had really good results with them. I think we've shot them for 3 years now, 4 years, something like that. And let me think here. For sure, my last 3 deer were all pass-throughs. Yep. Yeah, all 3 of them were pass-through. The only one, one of them wasn't a pass-through because I hit the offside shoulder, but I
Did you really?
I don't know.
I'm saying that because everybody says I hit the offside.
Well, it hit something that was. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I pull a 70-pound.
It stopped.
Yeah, it stopped. I pull a 70-pound bow at 29.5 inches. with a 500 grain arrow, and it was a 15-yard shot, right, right there out in front of me, and I hit it right behind the shoulder, and I knew he was dead. He didn't. I watched him drop within sight, but he took off with the arrow, and then he died, 30 yards from the shot. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no question that that it was a dead deer. But that's the only one in the last 3 years that hasn't been a pass through, with the sever. And I don't know what it hit, but because I didn't really do a full blown investigation, I guess, because I knew the deer was dead. But it was. My assumption would be is it hit something on the offside that stopped it pretty good. And
Yeah.
you know,
I just joke with people a lot of
yeah,
times when they, I mean, and here's what, and it does happen often, but here's the ones that get me is I'll see a video someone post on social media, or whatever, and they got like 6 or 7 inches of penetration. And the first thing they say is, I hit the off shoulder. And I'm like, you didn't even make it to the second lung.
yeah,
What are you talking about, the off shoulder? And I'm like, do you guys think that deer are that thin?
right, right.
I mean,
And that's
it takes.
and that's something that I've heard other people talk about. Especially in the upper Midwest. I mean, our deer aren't small deer. And
Yeah,
they have a huge body cavity. I mean, what is it, 18 inches in most cases?
yeah. And then if you're quartering away shot, then it just makes it that much farther to get to that off shoulder.
Yep.
So I think what people are what they're doing is they lost so much energy going through the deer, and they hit the ribs.
Right.
I don't think they actually make it through the chest cavity to hit the shoulder on the other side.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they hit the ribs on the other side. Some of these shots, there's so little penetration. It's like, wow, it's like it hit a brick wall. It's like whack. That's one of the other reasons I don't use a mechanical is because of that. You hear how loud it is, and wow, I like my arrows to just slip through that deer as quickly and you know where that deer just thinks it got stung by a yellow jacket or something. It just jumps and runs, and then it looks around like what happened. Next thing you know, it's getting weak leg and falls over.
Right.
A good sharp fixed broadhead, and if you get lucky and slip it right between the ribs and don't hit bone where it breaks anything, that deer has no clue, and they'll just stand around until they die.
Yep. 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 I've shot, not necessarily bucks so much, but I've shot some does that I shot them, it zipped through them, and they just stood there and kind of looking around, not really knowing at all what happened, and they just tip over. They didn't even take. They might have
Mm-hmm.
jumped sideways or something like that, like because they heard the sound of the bow. But if you slip, you slip an arrow through there and you don't break a bone or break, I mean, they might feel some pain and stuff like that, but it's so fast, and they bleed out so quickly, a lot of times that it is a super humane way for them to go. So,
Yep.
but anyway, but is there anything else with the TRAKR app that people should be aware of or know, kind of as we're kind of closing up?
Well, I will mention this feature, and most of the features are geared to trackers because we don't have this in the real world. But one of the things that that's always bothered me is when people ask, "What's your recovery rate?" and I'll tell them like 42, 45, sometimes 47%. It varies, and they're like, "Wow, I thought it would be higher than that." Well, number one, the deer has to be dead. We can't find living deer.
Right.
I guess we can jump them, but we can't recover living deer. And there has to be no property line issues. And if we didn't have those issues, we'd find, uh, we're finding the deer that are dead.
Right.
The rest of them are not dead, or we're not able to go across the property lines. And before I used to rely on the hunter if they saw the deer again after I tracked and didn't recover it. If they saw it on trail camera or it got shot later in the season, I would rely on them to call me and let me know. And about 18% of the people that I tracked for, I'd get a call back later in the season and say, "Hey, Shane, da 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 da." And a lot of us, it was after like the following year. Like I was tracking on two instances this past year. I tracked a deer for people that had a tracker out last year, a different tracker, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I had so and so out last year." I said, "Oh really? How'd that go? Did they ever find it?" No, but it did show back up on camera. I said, did you let the tracker know? No. I said, well, they would greatly appreciate if you let them know that, because now they know for sure they didn't leave a dead deer out there. That's always in the back of my mind. So one of the features on this app is after you've tracked for a hunter, and when you're done, you mark the track as complete, and it'll be a couple of questions for the tracker. Did you recover the animal? Yes or no. If you did, how far did it go? That sort of thing, just to complete the data. If you mark no, you didn't recover it, that track kind of goes in a hibernation mode. 30 days later, the hunter gets a notification on their phone saying, hey, the tracker came out 30 days ago or on this particular date, and tracked a deer for you, and they didn't recover it. Have you seen it again since on trail camera or whatever? Did it get shot later in the season, or did you find its body laying somewhere? And they'll indicate yes or no. If they indicate no, the track goes back into hibernation mode until 240 days, time for up here in the north for the snow to melt and everything. That's sometimes when you find people go shed hunting, they find
Yep.
the dead deer.
Yep.
They have the same question. Now, if at any point in that time, the 30 days or the 240 days, they indicate yes, the deer's been seen alive or found dead, a notification goes to that particular tracker that covered that track, and saying, hey, hunter just alerted, indicated that that deer's been spotted on trail camera. And so we get those notifications. And what that's going to do is going to really increase the number of proof of lice we have. For instance, I have a fellow tracker over in Wisconsin. He's mentioned a couple times where he makes it a point to call his hunters, every hunter he tracks for that doesn't have a recovery, multiple times throughout the year, to find out if they've seen that deer. And he says 80% of the deer he doesn't recover, they get confirmation of proof of life or proof of death, where it was shot later in the season or they see it on trail camera. And I'm like, wow, that's staggering. I thought it was only like the hunters are calling me. So there's a lot more deer out there that are being proven still alive after we track and we don't recover them. So that's a big feature for the trackers, but it's also going to be important for the data, because those right now when I post these tracking stats, that's primarily just consolidated just to the tracks where we have a definitive answer, recoveries, and things like that. Right. However Ryan puts it together. And so you really don't have an answer if someone says they hit it in this spot of the body, a double lung, and it was not recovered. We don't know for sure that's where to hit it because we didn't get a recovery. Where with this, with trail cameras and those proof of lice, a lot of times you can see where the injury was, and you can see, oh, it was actually a back whack. So it'll help in that regard. Plus, it'll help the trackers. Trackers are absolutely going to love that, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about that feature. So I mean, there's a lot of features in there, and there's a lot of features we're going to add. And I won't talk much more about that, but I think the trackers are going to really love it, and the hunters are going to love the data portion and the ease of getting a tracker.
Yeah, no doubt. That's super exciting. Like, I mean, I can't wait until you get the Apple one out. I'll definitely have it on my phone. I'm gonna, highly suggest that, really any hunter out there that's deer hunter should have it and be prepared. Like you mentioned, load your weapon, and all that information in there beforehand, so that you can make it quick. If you think you need a dog and you need a tracker, you can get that request put out there right away. Because the sooner,
and the app is very small. It's only like 23, 24 megabytes.
Sure.
So it's not a big demanding app. You can let it sit idle on your phone, and then it has offline capabilities. So if you don't have cell service, you can still submit or create the tracking request and hit submit. And then if you start driving towards home and you get cell service, it automatically sends it out as soon as you get like 1 bar or 2 bars, enough to send it out. And so you don't have to wait till you get service and then create it.
That's awesome.
So that's another good feature.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, I obviously haven't had a chance to play, mess around with it and check it out and that kind of stuff, but everything you've told me about it and that I've seen on the website and read about it, you guys put a lot of thought into this. You obviously have a lot of experience, with tracking, and obviously as a hunter. But I'm excited. I think this really could be something that is truly, just
a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, that gets thrown around a lot, but I mean, it is something that is going to be extremely helpful, extremely useful, and it only makes sense. Like, and it's one of those things, like I think about it, like when you have that idea about how something, oh, we really could use this in the hunting industry, or we really could use this or that in whatever, industry it might be. And you think about it, and then 3 years later, somebody else comes out with it, and you're like, I remember thinking
Yeah.
about that. What's cool is
Yeah.
I've never thought about this before, but I feel like you guys didn't sit back and wait for somebody else to develop this. You guys went ahead and developed it. You had a vision, you followed through with it. And I mean, that's awesome. I'm excited for you guys, and I
Well,
hope that it really, grows into something. I know you're not looking to, be millionaires off of this thing. It's more of a tool for everybody type of thing. But really, really appreciate the fact that you guys took that initiative to do this.
yeah, this actually should have been out like 2 years ago. It wasn't that we started working on it, and the cost was just way too high,
Yeah,
and so we put it on the shelf. But we kept digging around, doing some research. We found some award-winning developers that didn't, charge an arm and a leg.
right.
It's still costing a lot, but it's not quite as much as we initially thought. And yeah, surprisingly, I'm not the only one that thought of this. There's a lot of trackers that have thought about
Right.
this, and I've gotten the feedback. But I'll tell you what you said. We put a lot of thought into this app and the different aspects of it. It, I may have contacted my partners and say, hey, you want to go in on this, and had the initial kind of idea to say, let's do this. But we've had a lot of help from trackers and hunters. We have two test groups. There's like 8 or 10 trackers in one test group, and there's some hunters in another. And so every week, as we're developing this app, they're getting test versions. It doesn't have the full functionality, but they're saying, hey, we should probably do this. How about this feature? And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. So it wasn't just me,
Sure.
and it wasn't just my partners. We had a lot of great experienced trackers helping to design this. So when it says designed or built by trackers and hunters for trackers and hunters, that is absolutely 100% true. We have two teams of hunters and trackers that were made a big part of designing this app.
Yep. Well, I will give credit where credit's due, though. I mean, you guys did it the right way, and I'm excited for you guys. Definitely, will be using it, and I'm sure our team at Victory Outdoors will use it as well. We don't have none of our guys have tracking dogs or anything like that. So if it does come up and we think we need one, I'm sure it'll come in really handy this fall. But Shane, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to getting that Apple version out there. And if you guys got the Android, go ahead and download it now. Get your weapons loaded and be ready to go. Hopefully, best case scenario is you don't need a tracker, but if you do, this app's there available for you. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Shane, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you
Yeah.
got lots going on, so appreciate it.
Yeah, Kurt, it's always good talking to you.
Yeah, and we do need to get together and turkey hunt. I know I kind of went through a phase there where I didn't do too much out of state hunting and that kind of stuff. I got some young kids now and that kind of thing, but they're getting older. We're starting to take some trips as a family that are turkey hunting trips and that kind of stuff. So I'm getting freed up a little bit more. So we'll have to get together in the spring turkey woods for sure pretty soon. So
Sounds good. Yep, for sure.
all right, thanks everybody for listening. And again, check out that TRAKR app, and we will talk to you next time.